Well, very warm welcome before we all end today. I'm delighted to have this opportunity and very, feeling very grateful to have the opportunity to share some thoughts and reflections. And I think I have been totally inspired by today, just from Louise this morning, and recognising the sort of amazing sort of activity that is going on in Wales around digital. I think that's something we can all learn from and take away from. I want to offer some reflections and key points. I'm going to take us through a few slides, partly to keep me on time, to make sure you get to go away on time too. I think one of the key things that has struck me about the fact that we want to be a digitally enabled society is the commitment that is needed at all levels, from government to key stakeholders to funders, and that is that real imperative commitment to make a difference. But what has also struck me in my years of using digital is the power of all of us as individuals. And I think what has struck me listening to all of you is we between us have thousands of stories of how digital has changed lives, has embraced, has given possibility to people to connect and create and do good. I think one of the key points I want to raise is, digital inclusion is very much our starting point. We talk about getting people included, but ultimately it's about taking them on a journey, getting them to a point where they're comfortable to explore enough to know how digital could serve their individual interests and passions. And that brings us to a point of tension. And I think, I want to address this. It's one of the things we've been talking about today in my digital professionalism workshops. And that is the tension between, what we're excited and we know digital can deliver, and the tension of our systems and our processes that sometimes in management they don't always get it. But I think today a digitally enabled professional is not just somebody who looks after their reputation and is able to manage that online, but someone who's willing to innovate and share and develop good practice and use the tools and create. And I think digital professionalism has to recognize not just safe and responsible use, but also creativity, innovation, and inspired use, because the tools are there. We're at a place which is very exciting, but we need the structures around us to embrace that and understand that. And, all of us are here, I think, as digital champions and inclusion activists to make this happen. So the questions are, how do we build this culture of what I call digital professionalism, which is about that innovation, but also about understanding that you've got a reputation online, that people can see what you do and learn from you. I think there are a couple of key points. And one of the key points I would raise is we need to know what's possible. So, in one of the earlier workshops we were talking about, we know what we know how to use that social media is important. But the internet is like this giant shopping mall with lots of stores, and each of the stores offers different things, different software, different people hang out in different stores. Do we know enough about what's out there? How do we make sure we keep up to date with what's out there? Because only when we know we can inspire, and to sort of help me when I'm discussing this with colleagues and other people. I talk about the fact that yes, we know all this about social media. We know, Amazon is one of the most dangerous apps in the world. Why? Because you can sit in bed and 2 clicks later you've bought a lot of things. We know how life is changing. But we also need to understand that it is social, not just social media. We live in the middle of this network of networks. And in that you have access to content creation tools, to collaboration tools, to network with other people. I do a lot of work not just in Wales, but over years as I have older parents, I've tried to keep connections to Malaysia and Singapore, which is where I'm from originally. But the internet's been huge for that. And so I'm able to reap benefits because I can Skype, I can do all the things that you and I know bring benefit, but not just at an individual level. For businesses today, it is imperative. And when we think about community regeneration, a simple thing like a health app on a phone will have an impact. And I tell you a funny story. My father, who has been trying to lose weight over the years, about a year and a half ago, he embraced getting a smartphone. And it has transformed communication between Malaysia and Wales, because now he can see the grandchildren, we can talk for free, and it's incredible. But one of the apps I put on his phone for him, and I was talking to him about, is an app that actually clocks how far you walk. And ever since he's had that app, he started walking regularly and clocking the miles that he's doing. And that's not funny. I say it is funny, but it's not, because on another level, when you think about the health problems and challenges we have, and I think someone this morning, one of our speakers, mentioned, the revolution happening in healthcare, from simple health apps to healthy eating stuff, that has a knock-on effect on then the community services this individual needs. It then has a knock-on effect on the health bills and the NHS sort of systems we have. So we need to think about the fact that all of us, when we begin to use digital meaningfully, we begin to reap benefits. So, I want to offer a couple of reflections just to understand when I use the analogy, and I often think, how do we create a more inclusive society? Well, first we need to know what's possible. If you have access to the internet today, you have access to the largest marketplace in the world. And that is phenomenal when you think about it. But equally, it's a global meeting room. But equally, it's also the largest classroom in the world. And in the workshops before, we were talking about the fact that things like MOOCs today, massive open online courses, MOOCs, MOOCs, the fact that top MOOCs are available, anybody today can access and take a course. People today can actually learn from universities across the world. And I shared an example of my daughter who is now graduated, but in her first year, she didn't like what one of the lecturers, was not very good on her course, and she didn't understand what he was trying to get across. So she searched online for that particular module of information, and she found that course, that particular module, was covered by universities apart from her own university. And so she was able to access content from Harvard, MIT, and actually get to know the lecturer through that, access the videos, access the handouts. So the idea that today we are living at a time where there are no borders or walls to our classroom anymore. If you want to learn how to fix your bike, you want to learn to take a course, YouTube is one of the most amazing sources of interest. But do all our stakeholders know this? Do all the people we know and work with understand what is possible? And I think we'll only have an inclusive, digitally connected society when people begin to understand and use these technologies meaningfully. And we also, I think, one of the things we have to address is the barriers. And that barrier could be a very simple thing like a lack of access. And I still think we have some way to go in schools and in homes to have the level of access we need. But I think we also have to be creative. We have to turn to community hubs. We have to look at schools as possible venues that can offer learning. And I'm totally impressed that in Wales we have Digital Communities Wales, we have digital, we had 2.0 before, we had Communities at 1 before, because we are at the forefront of realizing this. But I have one concern, and that is our structures still are a bit dated. Our management still fear fully embracing it, and our starting point is often safety rather than trust. And I think if we are to innovate fully, we need to trust our workforce. We need to work with them and try out ideas. And if we were to really embrace that, I think we will see huge and positive innovation and possibility. So, the other key skills today that we need to really embrace this is to address the fear people have online. And I think people are still worried about safety. So some of the things we need to think about as essential skills for everybody who's going online, whether you're a worker, whether you're a service user, is stuff like crap detection. And I love crap detection as a phrase compared to e-safety. And it's a lovely phrase, and it came about by a gentleman called Howard Rheingold. Talks about 5 critical literacies, the skills we need: crap detection, understanding how to use networks and how networks work online, how to collaborate and participate, how to create content. And I think, when we address this, we are addressing fears that people have, but we then enable them to participate with the skill sets that they need. So today, one of the focuses in order for us to create this inclusive society is being digitally literate. And I think this is even more important when you think that more and more services aren't going to have a middleman anymore. I mean, the thing about that, and as Derek pointed out so eloquently this morning, there are new services like Uber, there are new services where social care apps might directly link you, the service user and the service provider without necessarily a huge middleman. I was listening to a talk by Cisco maybe last year sometime, where they were talking about this intelligent pill that you could swallow and that could be used by people with Alzheimer's, and the pill would communicate to a smartphone app that would tell you whether the elderly person has taken their medicine or not. We are going to see huge healthcare reform. We're going to see huge innovation. But you know, one of the things that's going to happen, I think, from my perspective, is there are going to be increasing issues around privacy, around trust, around reputation. So let us walk knowingly into this sort of space. Let us develop this leadership where we are all willing to try and learn. But I think also understand that all of us here can make that difference. You know, it's not down to one person. And I think systems are definitely changing, but it's an exciting time. And let's develop that culture of ongoing professional development. In other words, we don't just have a digital action plan that we say, today this is what it is. Constantly refine and learn. You know, I was talking about Daniel Pink, who talks about, who has a lovely talk on TED called The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. And he talks about 3 key skills, right? 3 traits, features. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. All of us as workers, as citizens, we like autonomy, we like to get good at stuff, and we like to have purpose. If our purpose was to be digitally skilled, but you and I don't have the resources and the time, could our teams, workers that you and I work with, could they have some of those passions and interests? So you might be an expert on Instagram, some of you might be expert on Google Documents, one of you might be expert on setting up a business online. How do we leverage this knowledge in a continuous flow so we upskill and constantly look out to learn? And I think that's what I'd like us to see to create this digitally enabled, inclusive society. So very big thank you. You know, I have more slides than I want to bore you with, but I think the key point I would like to say is we all own the agenda, and I think I'm very grateful to our Welsh Government for leadership. I'm very grateful to all the stakeholders for the vision. And I look forward to exciting times with all of you, and wish us all a good digital journey. Thank you very much.